charges, one individual. And we've said that needs to change. If you can only prove one count or one charge, go to court on one charge, even if the penalty for that one charge is 1 month imprisonment, as opposed to your 150 where you hope to get 10 years imprisonment. The important thing is that you need to prove the point that the law has been violated and the person has had their day in court according to law. Okay? If you evaluate now the kinds of cases that are being filed, that has radically changed. Number two is not going to court unless you are finished with your investigation. Now, one of the challenges with Nigeria, as I've said a number of times in the past, is that the expectation is very high and the appetite is voracious, not only for convictions, but to see people put in the dock. But that's not the way it happens all over the world. Investigation takes time. And I've used one example over and over again. Diezani was arrested in England in 2015. This is 2018. She has not been arraigned in court 3 years down the line. If it were to be in Nigeria, you would have seen street protests. They would have hired people to write vicious articles against government. The anti-corruption agencies would have been accused of compromise. All manner of things would have been said. But when you are dealing with complex economic and financial crimes cases and corruption, which hardly, I say hardly, especially big ones, they don't happen in the glare of the cameras. Okay? And if you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt, you really need to take your time. Don't forget also that some people have criticized that one of the reasons why cases fail is because anti-corruption agencies rush to court. So you've got to balance it. You've got to balance it. So if you arrest someone today and you want to see them in court tomorrow, be sure that your pressure is a route to failure of that case. And you cannot say, oh, we should not arrest the person because we have not finished the investigation, because your evidence might just disappear. So there are different things that you need to balance. So what I'm trying to say, therefore, and we've succeeded in changing that culture. The third example I'll give you is with assets. Before, both the public and the public officials and the government, the approach to dealing with the issue was more about the sanctions and enforcement of prosecution and send to jail. We've said a much more effective and globally accepted practice is to recover the proceeds of crime. Because you can hit the thief in the pocket. The life they have planned for themselves of a blissful, paradisic life, you know, a mansion by the beach side, you can make that dream disappear by collecting all of the money that they have stolen. So once people cannot account for assets that they are parading, you take it away. We're not saying you are a thief. We don't know how you stole this money. But we're saying that this can't be your money. So asset recovery we've prioritized. The fourth thing is one of the reasons I'm sitting in your studio today, calling attention to a different kind of corruption that is happening around us, which is in fact more egregious, that nobody looks at, which is illicit financial flows. Okay, so finally, you say, do we have a template and all that? We've been working with the National Bureau of Statistics now over a year to design a template to collect data on corruption trends. If you want to know about inflation trends, how much money came out, how the economy is doing, the Bureau of Statistics will give you, the National Bureau of Statistics will give you at the snap of a finger. But we've been having a conversation to say corruption is one singular factor that undermines the capacity for development. Why don't you collect data on this? So together with them, over some months, working with some development partners, we've designed a template that can be used to evaluate corruption trends so that government can take preventive measures. So when this is perfected, we expect to see in the near future that MBS will be able to also release information about new trends that are emerging, areas where we're losing money, as preventive measures, because as they say, prevention is better than cure. So that's my response to your question.
Yeah, Prof, I just want to find out, as a follow-up to that last bit, is that going to be at the federal level, or it's in also going to feature what happens in states, this data you're talking about?
Right now, the jurisdiction of MBS is to collect data globally within the country. In some areas, they don't have access to the states, but we're going to work with that statutory mandate at the moment because they also have the capacity to put people, officers, in agencies that are critical to their work. So it makes it easy to be able to collect the data. So of course, we're starting at the federal level. We do believe this is very easy. When something works very well at the federal level and you see the value of it, states would ask for it. I can give you an example. We know that many states have been having challenges, for example, meeting their obligations to their states, paying salaries, doing infrastructure and all that. Many come, especially under President Buhari, who has been very, very magnanimous, to get bailout funds. That's how it is discussed. But the federal government then gives conditions. If you are going to get bailout funds or budget support, you have to implement these reform measures. Those reform measures are to improve not just your fiscal capacity, okay, regulatory oversight, diminish corruption. So it's up to you. If you want to bail out money, okay, it's like going to the bank to borrow money. The bank says, if I'm going to give you this money, you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4. It's up to you. So that way, we're able to, again, spread and replicate at least principles and policies that work very well at the federal level that helps us to fight corruption. You are able to devolve them to the states in this measure.
Prof, concerning the illicit financial flows, I'm just wondering the role of international donors, especially when you think about funds donated to the Northeast, for instance. We know that in June 2018, the United States government donated about $102 million, and several other donations have come from governments and donor agencies as well to try to help humanitarian crises in countries like Nigeria, especially in the Northeast. But so little is seen on ground. Is that a conduit pipe, would you say, concerning how money is being fueled or moved around?
I don't agree with you. It depends on what the money is supposed to be used for. If, for example, money is donated to any crisis-ridden sector and it is meant to build schools, rebuild hospitals, rebuild infrastructure, you are not going to see it overnight. There are processes to get into that point, either procurement processes, contract bidding processes. I'm just using that as an example. So part of the problem about this wrongful narrative, that goes out to the public is also the impatience of the environment in which we are. I admit that we can't wait. We should be in a hurry to move forward. But there are also things that need to be done. So I don't agree. In any event, the people who donate the money, they are not idiots. So when you read in the newspapers that the United States government donates $100 million to Nigeria, you think they hand it over 100 million cash and drop it somewhere. It doesn't happen that way. Okay? The money most of the time comes in tranches. The people bringing the money have evaluated how it is going to be used. They usually would sometimes identify their own agency who will be involved. Sometimes they have a procurement process that involves civil society. So when you read these things in the news, and I have a civil society background, so I know what I'm talking about. I've received donor funds to do projects. Very rigorous. I'm not saying that there hasn't been abuse in the past. For example, the Global AIDS Health Fund, that was abused. And Nigeria paid back, okay? And they're prosecuting those who stole the money. So what I'm trying to say is that when you hear that donor funds is coming and then you haven't heard of activity, you then reach the conclusion that the money has been stolen. That would be uncharitable.
Prof, there are many instances. There's some things you talked about. You talked about prosecution, for instance, of this Yanni Alice Maduke. It has taken 3 years now since her arrest for us to hear that she's been arraigned in court. Now, you do know that there is a background in Nigeria. A lot of people believe that most cases are swept under the carpet. And, can you really blame Nigerians when they're yet to trust government in terms of its political will to prosecute? They still believe that government picks and chooses which cases it wants to prosecute.
I agree with you absolutely. I cannot challenge that position, that there's cynicism and skepticism and all that. But the reality, as I've said, is that if you are going to succeed, you need to take your time. Now, sometimes when you take that approach, you are between the devil and the deep blue sea. Because when you are taking your time, then somebody reaches the conclusion that, they have compromised that case, they've forgotten about it. But let me just tell you something. You can write it down. When you are guilty of corruption, if for whatever reason the government in power decides not to prosecute you, a government coming tomorrow can come after you. It doesn't go away. And by the way, the principle in our criminal law is that time does not run out against the state when it is a crime. So,
Professor, I know you talked about cynicism and the kind of the perception issues, but even the reality, if we're going to be fair to the truth, when you see a situation where the federal government releases a list of those they say are corrupt, and all of those people happen to be from one particular political party, when we know that even those within the governing party are even in court, it calls into question even the reality of whether or not the government is sincere in fighting corruption even-handedly. What are your thoughts to that?
I would have thought that that perception should have been defeated by the fact that APC members, strong ones, are having their day in jail right now. Dariye is an APC senator.
He wasn't on that list.
Well, I'm just saying that when people use this, that government does not, his case had advanced, so he couldn't have been on that list. That list that you are referring to is a list of cases that are ongoing. His case had moved on. So I'm just trying to use as an example to say, this is what you called it, perception. Sometimes perception can be stronger than reality. But my position is that if you have done wrong, it won't go away. Whether or not the present government wants to look at it, or is not looking at it closely enough, or is pussyfooting, or delaying, whichever name you want to call it, it will not go away. Okay? Secondly, why does it always happen that, oh, it is the opposition party, especially for when a new political party takes over government? Because when you take over government, and you are looking at what had happened before you got there, where will you look? At the people who were there before you. So inevitably, if you take over in channels today as CEO and you decide to do reforms, you will look at what happened immediately before you got there. Then somebody says you are targeting Malkwe and all the other people who were working there before. This is witch hunting. Who will you look at? So really, it starts from there.
No, but but in fairness, if you hear noise about somebody when they're on that side, and then they now come into the CEO circle, and then all of a sudden it goes silent, then that shows something that is not above board.
So what has gone silent? Nothing has gone silent. Nothing has gone silent. You can say, oh, they are not moving as fast as they are moving on that other one because this person is a part of government. I just told you now that whichever way it goes, once there's evidence against you, it won't go away. Some of the cases that we're dealing with are 14 years old. The people have been recycled in various governments over and over again. So let's assume that you are right, that government is delaying some of those cases. It will not go away.
Well,
because if somebody else is...
I think our point is a fine place to leave it. The fact that it will not go away, regardless of, you never can tell just when it will be taken up. But we have to thank you most kindly for spending time with us on Sunrise Daily this morning. Professor Bolaji Owasanoye is the Executive Secretary of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption. He's also been nominated to head the ICPC. Sunrise Daily will continue in just a moment. Please stay with us.